Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ottumwa City Council meeting. It's 5:30, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. And if everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Basu. Here. Councilmember Galloway. Here. Councilmember Hoffman.
Here.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Your Honor, I'd like to have item number 4 and 5 pulled out for discussion before we approve it.
Okay.
Does someone want to second that? So that's an amendment or amended?
Yeah, it would be an amended motion. So does anyone want a second? Councilman Cavanaugh's amended motion.
I'll go ahead and second that.
Okay. Yeah. Chris will go ahead and take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Basu. Yes. Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
So then I'm gonna go ahead and do item number B4.
Okay.
Approving a purchase of a case mini excavator from the grinder implement for the sewer department in the amount of $101,274.08.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, Mr. Bergmeyer, you're up.
Yeah, so this is the motion, I guess, to approve the purchase of a case mini excavator from Grinder Implement. The approximate amount of $101,274.08 from Grinder Implement in Ottumwa. The excavator was evaluated on November 7th, 2023 with the recommendation to replace the fleet. With the recommendation to replace, the fleet committee approved the replacement. I shouldn't say trailer. Should approve the replacement at December 12th, 2023 meeting. Specs for the excavator were presented and approved by the fleet committee at the May 29th, 2024 meeting. The pricing is for Sourcewell, and which Grinder Implement agreed to match. The replacement cost is approximate due to inflation and delivery time after ordering.
Well, apparently there were at least 2 bids that went out.
Sourcewell is like a bid aggregation service. So a Sourcewell price is you already have a group of bidders that submit prices to Sourcewell. It's kind of like Iowa State bid. It's kind of like the Iowa State bid where the DOT solicits prices on different vehicles and they get the lowest bid on there. Sourcewell is the same way. They aggregate bids, and the low bid on Sourcewell already includes bids for multiple vendors with it.
So it came back to Grinder through that organization.
Correct.
And this was all approved prior to my being on council. But I would be interested in seeing what their statement of need was, what the deficiencies were on that piece of equipment.
Well, it wouldn't have been prior to you. It would have been at the capital items, the budget. We approved the budget for capital items. That's where that budget amount of 118,346 came from, was from those budget meetings last fall.
Okay, so my comment is the same. Somewhere or other, I would like to see what they said was wrong with that piece of equipment and what it would take to repair it before we order a new one.
I believe that might have been presented during the budget meetings. I don't have that information with me now, though.
Okay, we'll drop that. Move on to item number 5. Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon.
Is there any other questions for Philip regarding D4? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Basu. Yes. Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Approving the purchase of a backhaul, is that how you pronounce that? Backhaul? Backhaul sewer cleaning back truck from Municipal Pipe Tool Company of Hudson, Iowa for the sewer department in the amount of $586,453.04.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second. Okay, Philip.
Okay, this, staff summary is for the replacement of a sewer cleaning and back truck. The, current backhoe it's replacing was purchased in, November of 2007. It's only used as a backup right now. We have another newer one that we use as our primary, machine. So this backhoe is evaluated on November 8th, 2023, recommendation to replace. The fleet committee approved the replacement at their December 12th, 2023 meeting. And the specs were approved at the May 29th, 2024 meeting. The specs are also from Sourcewell, delivery date of 12 to 18 months from the order. The decision versus truck is based off performance of our current truck. The other bid we got was for a different manufacturer, and it was a little bit lower, but we thought it'd be beneficial to have two trucks that were the same pump, same electronics, safe way to operate it. That way, when one of them goes down, we switch to the other truck, to clean with. We're not having to kind of relearn, we're having to switch gears to operate it. There's a 1-inch cleaning hose that will be purchased separately, at a cost of $2,500, because backhaul charges a lot, $12,000 for the same hose. Get it aftermarket cheaper. Again, this was budgeted for $647,680.23, and the cost of the actual package is $586,453 and 4 cents.
Does council have any questions for Philip regarding D5?
When did you say that was, purchased originally?
So this is, I don't know if you've been down to Public Works, but there's they call it Red Dragon. The red one is the one we're replacing.
I've seen it on the street.
So it was purchased in 2007, so it's about 17 years old now.
Okay,
And then the one they use as their primary truck, I believe, was purchased in 2014. So we kind of got them on an offsetting 7-year schedule for replacement for the two back trucks. And when we get the new one, that'll become the primary truck, and the new one now will become the backup. It'll all become a secondary truck in case wastewater needs to use it for a separate issue, like to back up something there. They can do that while we're still cleaning and televising, because we're required by the DNR to do what we call 7 controls. And one of those controls, we have to clean at least 1/7 of the sewer every year. So we need to have a good truck that stays operational so we can meet these footage targets to be able to clean enough of our sewer for the DNR.
so is the truck out daily, weekly, monthly, what?
This backup one is not out daily. The primary one is every single day, that unless they're replacing an intake or unless the truck's down, it's out every day. And when that truck is down, there's nothing else for it to do. They'll take the backup truck and start cleaning with it.
Okay, condition of the backup truck is from 1 to 10, what?
3 or 4, honestly.
Okay, well,
Probably
my
closer to
comment
3.
would be, we don't necessarily need to meet deadlines for replacement, depending on the piece of equipment. So if it's a 7-year deadline and we don't need it till 10, that's where we ought to go.
Well, that's what the fleet committee does. They evaluate it on a case-by-case basis, and they'll make a recommendation on whether to replace or not. And then if they recommend to replace, we'll try to add it to the capital item budget for that fiscal year, the next fiscal year. And during those hearings on those is when it gets approved in the budget, so we evaluate it before budget time comes on a case-by-case basis of whether it makes sense to replace it or not.
Okay, my only comment is, my experience is when you set up a replacement date, then your evaluation usually moves towards that date.
That's not always the case, like that excavator, I believe, probably on a 10-year replacement schedule, and it was 2009. Go back on it, and we have 2009, so it's 15 years old. Then we have cars that are on a 7-year replacement schedule we've kept for, and the car I drive is an 09, so it's been here for 15 years.
I'm sure that my comment is not 100% correct, but I'm just suggesting. Sometimes the committees will evaluate close to based on replacement date.
Well, I think what it is the department submit based upon the replacement schedule, but, going through what has been approved and I'm doing the road use tax report right now. And going through and seeing what is on the equipment list and the age of some of them, they're beyond what is considered their useful lifespan, because the committee evaluates each of these on a case-by-case basis. So I think that even though there's that schedule there, the departments may submit for it. But from what I can tell already is that the committee evaluates it so hard that they don't always get replaced on the replacement schedule, because they look at it and they say, there is more useful life of this piece of equipment, and that they'll extend the life of it. And that is also part of our purchasing policy, is that equipment is evaluated, and it's not necessarily based upon the schedule of replacement, but where it is at its useful life in comparison to maintenance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mallon.
Does anyone else on council have any questions for Philip regarding item B5? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes,
Councilmember Basu.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes. Okay, the next agenda item is.
No, Mr. Mayor, you need to vote on the entire agenda now. You don't have that. The rest of the consent agenda. Yeah.
Okay. Chris will take the roll.
So this is the one that Cyan moved and McIntyre said.
Right.
Correct. Just make sure we is up. Councilmember Cavanagh.
yes,
Councilmember Basu.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes. Okay, now we need to approve our agenda for tonight's city council meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, Chris, take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
yes,
Councilmember Basu.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes. The next item is our city administrator's report to council and citizens. I'm going to turn it over to Phil Brent, our city administrator.
All right, thank you, Honorable Mayor. Tonight we have Mark Rowley, Executive Director of Greater Tacoma Partners in Progress, and he is here to provide a quarterly update.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mark. Excellent.
Did you get the two dice switches behind the airflow?
Excellent. So I'll do this in the same format that I have done in the past. We'll kind of do a little bit of a community update now, looking into the Partners in Progress stuff. I do think that it's important to do the community update. That way everybody realizes, kind of where we're at economically in the community. We'll talk about the commercial investment. We'll talk about business expansion that has happened in the community. We'll talk about workforce. First off, you've seen this chart before. It has been updated to reflect the current year projects. To start off with, though, looking back at 2023, we, as a community, completed about $25 million worth of projects, both private and public projects. So right now we're on pace to do about $109 million this year. Last year was about 134, and some of that obviously rolled over into this year. But with that, we know that there's a few $1 million more worth of projects coming that are going to start at least in 2024 and then move over into 2025. So, and you can see that pretty much everywhere in town as you're looking around. We have some fairly major things going on. So, in the way of business expansion, we have seen a net gain again this year for businesses in the community. I've listed the ones that we have seen going this year so far. We're up 8 businesses, one that's 0 for the year. But the bigger story that needs to be told here is we do have positive business growth once again in the community for the second year in a row. So it's been quite a while since we've seen net growth year over year in the community. So that's good. And just so everybody's aware, that business mix is really retail and restaurant growth here. So we did see one healthcare organization move in, and we anticipate that we're going to see a couple more of those in the coming months. And looking at, because this obviously is probably going to be a topic of discussion tonight, so I see, looking at local option sales tax and hotel motel tax, and comparing this to what it was a couple of years ago. And the reason I'm doing it over a couple of years ago, last year seems to be a little bit of an anomaly for both of those, one low, one high. But this is really important because this is, as you've all heard before and you know, but for the public's consumption, local option sales tax and hotel motel tax is an important revenue generator for the city, for any city, because that's money that's coming into the coffers that the citizens of the city don't have to pay out. And as you can see, over the 2 years, we have seen positive growth in those numbers. So I think that that's something that, you know, really goes to show proof in the pudding from some of the economic development growth that we've seen over the couple of years with some of the new hotels, some of the new retail outlets, things like that. It's pretty easy to forget going back in time 2 years when we didn't have a TJ Maxx, we didn't have a Five Below, we didn't have some of the restaurants that we had, we didn't have cobblestone hotels. So this is just a nice reminder of where we were and where we are. Now, unfortunately, with all the positives, sometimes you have a little bit of a negative, and we are on a little bit of an uptick in unemployment this month. Comparing that to the national average, we're still pacing a little bit below the national average, but for the state of Iowa, we are pacing a little bit ahead of the state average. We're by far not the largest in unemployment census for the state, which is fantastic, but we are running a little bit high. The labor participation rate has not changed all too much, which is good to know. But we are still pacing a little bit under both the state and the national averages. And then we have seen a little bit of loss of jobs in the community, and most of those are going to be your manufacturing-based jobs. And then the one thing that everybody's been asking about is what was the economic impact of RAG-BRAI? And we just finished this up today. We met with some of the RAG-BRAI advisory board members, and we kind of compiled this. It was good. We had about 18,000 riders. Estimated impact to the RAG-BRAI grounds themselves, which would have been Bridgeview Center. We're estimating about 10 to 11,000 people that were there. The hotel saw an occupancy rate for the day of a little over 89%. 53% last year, same day, so we saw about 68% increase. And that translates to about, for the course of the month, because of we can't get day-to-day numbers for tax revenue for the month, we're looking at about a $9,000 increase over prior period. And then the local option sales tax increased about $28,000 over the Department of Revenue estimates, which again is a month, so it's kind of hard to tell what the daytime was. But Gene, I'm sure, has reported already that the Greater Ottumwa Park saw their second best year ever as a result of RAG-BRAI. And we were voted the best overnight stop, and the estimate for the economic impact for the day is $870-ish thousand. So I do want to take this moment to say that we had a whole lot of volunteers in the community and great leadership by the people that were the heads of the community. So hats off to every one of them, because they pulled off a pretty spectacular things. Okay, with that, for the GoPet report, we'll start with retail strategies, and this is not going to be the prettiest picture, I promise you, but I will be transparent. We did have a letter of intent on the table for a box space at Herberger's. I reported that at the last council meeting. That has since failed, and the retailer withdrew their offer on the lease. So we also had a pad site that had an offer at Quincy Place Mall, and that has since failed as well. And this is, I want to stress, this is not at the cost of anybody locally or retail strategies that these fell through. So there a lot of effort was put into both of these particular situations. They did not come to fruition. So with that, Zach Simonson and I had a very lengthy conversation with Retail Strategies, and at this point in time, we feel that the focus is better shifted to the target box for the remaining space that's there, and that's where the efforts are going to go from now on for any big box space. We did launch, I'm sure everybody saw a couple of months ago, flyer for franchise opportunities, and we have had some hits on that to this point. And then some of the other current sites of focus are Theater Drive, Richmond District, and Wildwood Plaza still remains a priority for us. And then to some degree also Venture Drive, there's a couple of properties in there. So in the business districts, looking at focus on the West Second, we entered into a partnership with the Legacy Foundation for rejuvenating the signs for the businesses. We have finished the installation of one business. We are waiting on the project coordinator to come and grab the other sign and put it up, and it'll be complete. And we're working on design for 3 other businesses. The Church Street District, we worked with the Ottumwa Area Arts Council, and we have commissioned 5 floral art sculptures in the district. We installed 3 additional trash receptacles, and this is in anticipation of another item that's on your agenda for the evening. And then we did hold another district meeting with some of the businesses on there. The topics of conversation was the importance of completing the Oxbow Trail behind Church Street and along Richmond and circling back to the park, crosswalks, and then safety lighting along the district. Helgerson Flats, the recertification is nearing its completion at this point. I know that that's a conversation that we had when we were talking the last time I was here. We talked about being in the beginning phases of it. Now we're at the ending phases of it. The environmental reports have been completed. Those have been submitted to the United States Army Corps of Engineers for the letter of determination. The SHPO review has been completed at this point, which means the archaeological reports, things of that nature, those are all completed. And all of the utility studies have been completed for the area. So we're looking at about an October 1st timeframe for recertification on the property. And the next steps, obviously, for what's important to you folks is incentives conversations to help market the property moving forward. GoPip has started the process of creating 2 new events, and I think it's important that we talk about the mission alignment for each of these events, because I don't think that has necessarily been talked about with the production in the past. We're starting a Dia de los Muertos, and that will be working in tandem with the League United Latin American Citizens, and that will be on November 2nd. And that is a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging event. And then the second one is an Ottumwa International Film Festival, which is a quality of life and tourism event. From a marketing perspective, we have completed the first video production that we're doing outside of the city. We're just waiting on final approval for that. That'll be launched. And at the same time, we have started what was part of the contract with the city of Ottumwa for the next marketing video for the city of Ottumwa. We will be launching, starting this week, a podcast series focused on the arts in Ottumwa. And if everybody, shameless plug, Chief Farrington had one in April, so anybody who hasn't listened to that is actually very informative about it. So thank you for taking part in that. Good. Okay, business engagement. This is something that we've been tracking for quite a while, and we just haven't talked about it, but we kind of hit a milestone. So I did feel that it was necessary to talk about. For the first time, we've hit over $11,000 in Go Pit Bucks. And for anybody that doesn't know what Go Pit Bucks are, they're gift certificates that were specifically bought for people to spend money in Ottumwa at partner businesses. So that's important, and that helps keep money inside our economy here in Ottumwa. So we're pretty happy about that. We have done 10 ribbon cuttings this year, and some of the things that we're looking to in the future are business specific consultations, new eggs and issues, which would be legislative events, and a youth workforce initiative. And then looking at some of the current things that we have going on, we are working with several groups on riverfront development. We're still working with a partnership group on how we can move forward with the East Alta Vista property, St. Joe property. And with the foundation, we have been working with the Ottumwa Juneteenth Committee and the West End Ignited Committee for community projects. And then a recent project we just started with Iowa State University. And with that, I talked really fast, but out of respect for your time. Does anybody have any questions?
Council have any questions for Mark?
Real quick one, just a comment. Where did, I guess it was a question, but who was voted number one on the Rag Rice days? Did the bicyclists do the voting or was that?
Yes, that was a survey with RAGBRAI put out.
Some other positive from the big.
Yes, absolutely.
Actually, I had a comment on that. The same thing, I mean, Ragbri, as big as it is, 18,000 riders, and we were voted number one, that's phenomenal. I went to Ragbri that night, and I had a blast. I want to tell you, every volunteer was going 100 miles an hour, they were sweating and getting it done, and pulled off. I mean, one of the most phenomenal nights I've ever had, and I'm not just saying that because I got to eat 4 ice cream cones for supper because my wife was there. But they were working really hard and we pulled it off and obviously voted number one stop for the night. I mean, and so, you know, my hat's off and I had those volunteers, they really pulled it off. You know, I'm proud to be in Ottumwa that day, but that night I gotta be proud to be in Ottumwa on their back for the hard work they were doing in front of 18,000 people. So, I mean, it was a great night, great volunteers. It was a real shine for Ottumwa.
Mark, I guess I have a question. Was there any common themes that you saw from these business ventures that Retail Strategies was working with that didn't come to fruition? Was there any common denominators, or they all declined for different reasons, or?
No, there's a common denominator. It's quite frankly the property owner. If I'm being honest, it had nothing to do with the relationship between the Retail Strategies and the companies. It hadn't even gotten to a point of talks of incentives or anything like that. It was pretty hard to stop.
So do you think there's anything else that can be done with the mall owner to try and entice him to be more open and flexible to trying to have new businesses come into the mall?
So on several occasions, Mr. Simonson and I have had conversations with the mall owner. I know Administrator Raff, myself, and Zach, we have talked at length here recently about, you know, what some of those options may be, but, you know, the law is pretty clear on what can and can't be done, so that it makes it difficult. And the really challenging part of this is, from an economic growth perspective, most of the potential retail development is really going to be hyper-focused in that area, just, you know, because of its synergy in the area and the traffic pattern out in that area. So that's where a lot of the retailers want to be. They want that second generation space, and that's where it's all at. So, you know, we really have to find a way to make that work, or we're going to have to find someplace else to go with it.
I know at one meeting when I sat him on, I think a year and a half ago, he was wanting the city to commit to some infrastructure incentives. And I think the problem we had at that point was he wasn't willing to put any skin in the game until the city also put a chunk of incentives into him to enhance his building. And I don't know if he ever got back to you on that or not.
Yes, he did. And Zach can feel free to correct me on anything. He brought up some things that were being given to him in other states, which aren't actually legal under Iowa code. And it just, at least my observation was, he wanted the city to do that. And I think it was along the way, we've been pretty clear that there's really no way that any of us could advocate for for the taxpayers to bear a burden of his improvements when it's been him who has let the building decay.
Yeah. So I would say just, it's incidents like that that give tax increment financing and other incentives a bad name. Because people that don't necessarily need it are looking to get it because they think they can. And unfortunately, it's holding the rest of the progress hostage.
Has there ever been any discussions with him about what he would take to buy it?
Oh, no. Not to my knowledge, anyway.
Well, you know, Ford Dodge bought their mall van up there, so I'm not necessarily saying that Ottumwa should do that, but I'm just curious. I wonder what he'd want to sell it for, because if he doesn't make those improvements, your school right is gonna decay, and that's not really good for nothing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, it isn't just the mall that he owns. He owns all the green space pretty much along the Quincy Avenue corridor, so, you know, we're not just talking about one piece of dirt.
But the mall is big. I mean, that's a big chunk of it. It could be easily repurposed for new retail if he's hoping to invest in the building. Any other questions from council?
Mark, at one time, I visited with Mike, who was the manager over there, and he said they were talking about possibly making outdoor access to all of them on the parking lot side and making storage out of the backside of the building. That's just conversation. I don't think there was any real meat in it, but they were thinking about doing something. The problem is, people that wanted into Herberger's and, excuse me, possibly into the old Penny's Park, was that he just walked on the roof. He wasn't gonna fix the roof until somebody signed a contract. And the
Would be
people weren't gonna sign the contract unless the roof was fixed.
That would all be accurate, as a matter of fact, that, you know, the conversation that those two were referring to was exactly, that was to redesign that space to have front entrance and, you know, the conversation about the hundreds of thousands of dollars it would take to redo the roof, the hundreds of thousands of dollars to redo the HVAC system in the building. And I think that's where the hold is. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I think the owners are happy to write that off as a loss. They really don't care. That's my opinion. That's not a statement from them, but
Sure.
based on what I've seen go down, you know, the Bath and Body or whatever it was, they had a deal in there with, and as long as the owners kept the major stores in place, they would stay there and pay rent. If those major stores pulled out, they were rent free. That happened for more than 2 years. And one day they said to me, guess what? Rent free doesn't mean anything if you don't have any customers. So that's why they moved out.
Yeah. I think that's a fairly accurate observation.
Any other questions for Mark? Appreciate your report.
Thank you.
Bless you.
While the other presentation being brought up here, talking about Ray Bry, and I know it's been stated before, and the volunteers did a great job in observation of Labor Day yesterday. There's also a lot of city staff that weren't just volunteering, but were on the clock to put all of their efforts into that and getting things ready ahead of the event and then all throughout the event. So just a recognition for them as well. And I know Mark did that through a message, and I shared that with all the department heads at that time too. So just want to mention that as well. And then the other thing under the agenda here was local option sales and services tax. And this is going to be a little different view from the forum that the League of Women's Voters had. And so we'll start here. So there's a conversation circulating about the pending ballot measure regarding the local option sales and service tax and the associated revenue purpose split, going from the 90-10 where it currently is to the 70-30. The current split provides funding for street and sewer projects, as well as about $440,000 in general fund support. The timing of the election provided the opportunity to review the contribution to support other purposes, especially in light of changes to the property tax law or the consolidated general fund levy. And so taking a proactive approach to the financial picture for the city, staff recommended and the city council approved a revised split, which would provide additional support for the general fund without severely impacting the ability to complete future street and sewer projects. And so just one thing here to really highlight that we are not talking about a new tax. This is the continuation of the sales and service tax, which already exists in the city. And it provides a lot of revenue, estimated $4.4 million currently to the city. So this graph here, you got the one on the left is showing, and with it being darker here, unfortunately, doesn't show this as well. The lower part there that's shaded, that is all of the general fund levy. And so in 2024, all the way to the left, it's at $8.10. And then all the way to the right, 2029 is also at $8.10. The part, the darker blue triangle above it, is reflective of the city-owned civic center operation maintenance, the 13.5 cents, as well as support for public library, the 27 cents. So that's 41 cents there, 40.5 cents that we had in 2024. And then the green above that is the emergency levy, which is 27 cents. So in 25, those went into what is now called the consolidated general fund. And so it was at 87.5 cents, or $8.77.5 in 24, and then it went down to $8.52 and change, and it is going to trend all the way down to $8.10 when we get to 2029. The chart on the right shows the blue that's across there. If everything stayed the same at $8.77.5 compared to where we're going to be trending in 29 and 30 when it's at $8.10. And you can see that gap there is reflective of the change in the tax levy. And if the continued level of service is desired, those revenues would have to be identified. We need to be able to make up that gap in revenue there. So what does the general fund provide? We've talked about this before, that $8.10. That's your public safety, police, fire, et cetera, public works. Part of that is engineering, refuse collection. Refuse collection is made up with the bills that people pay, but it's coded out of the public works area there when you're looking at the state budgeting. Health and social services, building and code enforcement, health department cleanups, cultural recreation, the muni band, parks, beach Ottumwa, those quality of life things that we were talking about a moment ago. Community economic development, planning and zoning, general government, administrative support to all those departments, plus the city hall maintenance comes out of there. And then operating transfers. So what those other levies didn't cover, the overage in the cemetery, the overage in the library, or additional support to BBC. After the consolidated general fund levy was passed, we're going to be rolling in, the emergency levy was 27 cents, as I mentioned. So that was general fund support, dollars that came in. We now have to make up that difference. The event center, the 13.5 cents that went to help offset the contractual obligation for Bridgeview Center. And then the library, which is the previously voted levy to support the library. In one of the conferences I was at earlier this year, Doug Griffiths, he's the author of 13 Ways to Heal Your Community. And those who've been through the Ottumwa Leadership Program may have read that book as part of their offering. He'd offered at the conference, there's top 5 reasons why people choose to live where they live. And those were the collaboration and cooperation, how well different entities get together and work together in the public for the common good, quality of life, housing and workforce, infrastructure was number 4, and taxes was number 5. And so surprisingly, the cost and the infrastructure were lower than quality of life and some of those other items. The results indicated that although infrastructure is important to prospective residents and businesses moving into the community, quality of life spending is equally as important when considering where they want to live. So, 90-10, the status quo. This graph here is showing that at the current service level, so if nothing else changed with the service we're providing, and looking at a growth estimate of 1.75% over this period of time. This is from 25 to fiscal year 35. I'm anticipating a 2% inflationary growth factor or cost factor. So 2% may be low, but that's what was used as the estimate. If we're looking at that, so 2% inflation, 1.75 average growth, we're at a structural deficit kind of all the way through. So this last year, we improved the budget with $250,000 deficit, and it only gets worse if we do not change anything. By fiscal year 32, it's estimated that gap in the line, and the top line is the expenditures, is $1 million for that year. By the end of that 10-year period, the combined deficit is estimated at $8.5 million. So if we went to an 80-20, which is one of the things that was talked about earlier this year, you can see the curves get a little bit closer, but there is still a structural deficit. The top line, again, expenditures is still higher. It gets close in 27, but it's still about a $70,000 annual deficit that year, and it grows to $794,000 annual deficit by the end of fiscal year 35. And at that same time, the combined deficit is estimated at $4.4 million. So 70-30, this is what was presented. The council approved that April 23rd special meeting, 70-30, the 4-1 vote. You can see at this, now the top line is actually the revenues. It does get closer towards the end, but revenue does stay, other than this first year, ahead of that. We have a called structural surplus. By fiscal year 35, that annual surplus is 86,000. So it gets close, but it's still positive at the end of the 10-year period for the local option sales and service tax. The surplus dollars could be used to support streets and sewer projects or reduce the levy. So the council would have an option every year, if we're looking at projected surplus, of deciding what to do with that. This split leaves the greatest dollars toward future assets or towards future street and sewer projects while maintaining the current level of services into the future. It would assist with replenishing a healthy balance in the general fund. Alternatively, as I said, future city councils could opt to transfer surplus dollars into capital projects or reduce the property tax levy. I believe this graph represented why the city council voted to shift to the 30% toward property tax relief. Not to say that the city streets don't continue to need attention, but the level of service, but at what level of service is the city willing to forfeit? So sample ballot language looks something like this. Shall the following public measure be adopted, yes or no? And then it'd have this language. It would be for a 10-year period, starting January 1, 2026, to December 31, 2035. And it's, again, that same 1% that everyone is already currently paying. Which point out, I think it was mentioned at the forum, 60% of that is projected to come from outside the city. So that's a big chunk of that that's being supported by people that don't live here to help offset the different things we do. And then the other part here is that revenue change from 30% for property tax relief and 70% for streets improvements and sewer improvements. So a yes vote, unless there's a change in law, this would continue then for 10 more years at the new split. The city would continue to receive revenue of about $4.4 million. That was the estimate for this coming year. And it would change that split, as mentioned, which would give about $900,000 to help support the structural deficit and maintain the current level of services into the future. It also grants us time for growth to catch up and hopefully overcome the inflationary factor. And that's what's going to really help out the structural deficit long term. A no vote, on the other hand, would mean that we either have to take it back to a vote of the citizens and maybe evaluate why it was defeated and try to change things to get it to pass. And if not, then December 31st, 2025, the revenue coming in from local option sales tax would cease to exist. And that would be an annual loss of about $4.4 million. Then the city would need to consider other revenue sources, which may include an increase in the franchise fee percentage and or a severe reduction in services to address that lost revenue from not only the combined general fund, levy law, but also the loss of revenue from the local option sales and service tax. And at that point then, with losing that $4.4 million, we would see a slowdown in sewer separation and street repair programs, or an increase in debt service to be able to cover those future project costs. So I will open it up to any questions from council. I know you've heard all this before. And actually, I'm gonna hit the other slide here for more information that people are looking for. We're gonna make this available to the public as well. As I mentioned, the League of Women Voters Lost Forum is out there currently for review. And we do have our special meeting with the Ottumwa City Council where this 70-30 split was voted on. Iowa League of Cities has a special report on local option sales and service tax, and Department of Revenue for the state of Iowa also covers information about that. Hope people can do some of their own research as well.
Those are on the city's website, right?
We can have links to all these, I think, put onto the city website.
Your Honor, can I comment, please?
Yes.
I was the one person that voted against this division of 70-90, 70-30, excuse me. Conversation that Bill has given you does not talk about not having the overall sales tax issue coming in. I'm encouraging people to vote against it, and we'll bring it back and discuss why it didn't pass and what we can do to correct it. I think the important thing is not suggesting we do away with the sales tax. I am suggesting how it's represented and split up. And I'm gonna tell you right now, if you think any of it will go to reduce your property taxes, good luck. And please call me when it does. Other than that, if you're satisfied with the condition of our streets, how well they're kept, then we ought to take that money and put it someplace else. Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm not saying that it is going to, what we're going to see is it is automatically, it's already, this year, it was lower. In future years, it's going to lower up to the point where we get to 810. So we are going to see that reduction regardless. And the offset is if we don't have any revenue for that, a reduction in services. So, there's a choice that has to be made there. And I think you saw, let's go back to that 70-30 split there, or even the 90-10. And you can see the gap there. So that's where I was reflecting, and where I was looking at projecting out ahead and being proactive with what we're seeing as far as revenues and expenditures and the trends there, and how do we offset that. I know Mr. O'Donnell had some thoughts on how to help with streets and sewers as well, funding.
I just have one question. So to clarify, when you say a reduction in services, what does that mean?
Well, we know that for fiscal year 24, there's about $422,000 in revenue from those three levies. And I think it was $460,000 for fiscal year 25. I don't know how much that'll grow going forward, but if we don't have that $450,000 or $500,000 to pay for services, there's a gap in the budget of $500,000. And the only way you make that up is with cutting services, which will tend to be staff members who provide those services. Because we're a service industry, that's where the biggest impact is going to be. So you may have less hours for the library. You may have less people patrolling the streets. And this, I'm not saying fear stuff, but when it comes to reality, there are impacts for those decisions.
Phil, is it also a reality that we would have to cut the staffing in our streets department as well?
That would be a decision for the city council. Cole and I would work with staff as far as where we saw that we could try to reduce things. We had, just to keep the current level of operations, like I said, we ended up with a $250,000 deficit that was approved to move forward. And that was with staff eliminating as much as they could in the general fund areas there to try to really get as efficient as possible. And we'll continue to operate and try to find ways to be efficient. Cole has reinstituted the capital improvement plan, which is going to give us the ability to plan out those expenditures. But the vehicle we talked about earlier in the agenda, And that's really the important thing. This is planning and looking ahead to see what we can do to maintain the level of services. And whether it's police, whether it's parks, whether it's reduced library hours, you know, the event center, whatever it is, something is going to have to be done to cut. And unfortunately, quality of life issues are some of the first things to go. And that's why I wanted to mention that they're also one of the most important things when people are looking about where to live. In today's society, you can work just about anywhere, you know, especially if you have a computer and that's what your job is. So where you choose to live, people are typically doing that first and then finding a job. And that's the trend that we're kind of seeing with the next generation of workers.
Travis, I'm sorry, Cole, just one more question / comment. Travis, could you go to the slide that shows what the general fund actually puts money towards?
And the other thing too is when we are at a maximum $8.10, that's when trusted agency, the benefits portion spills over. So we may not see the 810 come down, but if we are more efficient in some areas, we may see where some of the trusted agency numbers are coming down. That's still part of that total levy that would impact the taxes that people pay. So there's many cities across the state where they're not necessarily as high as we are on a trusted agency because they're still able to pay some of their benefits out of the $8.10. In fact, we can't charge anything over into trusted agency unless we've already maxed out the $8.10. And so I think that's where we see things happening, or their debt service. If communities are forced to push things, and so a suggestion that was made this morning where, well, what if we had to, you know, on an annual basis, bond for our operations in essence, because the debt service, you know, has a limit, but it's outside of this $8.10. I would not recommend that, and I stated that this morning too. I think that's where you run into issues is when you're trying to bond for annual operating expenses. So there are ways that we could choose to try to pay for services. This is one of them that I think at the moment would make the most sense, and it just worked out with the timing of when this vote comes up to try to help give us that relief at this time.
Mr. O'Donnell, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, so I'd like to respond to three of the items. First of all, to Councilmember Basu. The road use, the street department is funded through road use tax primarily, right? There is a portion of local option sales tax that goes to support into the road use tax fund, but it's for the street maintenance program, right? So this is the crack filling, seal coating that we're, as part of the CIP, we're hoping to put together a more comprehensive plan on what streets need to be done with that with that money. The current budget puts in $750,000. The previous budgets have put in $500,000. So that may fluctuate depending upon the amount of local option sales tax that we receive and the program that we're planning on doing. Right? So then the next item is we have never said that this shift from 90-10 to 70-30 will reduce your property tax. It is to fill a gap created by the legislature. What I will say to you is this, is that in the next 3-4 years, our property tax levy will be reduced, which means that we will be asking for less tax money. So whether it comes from local option sales tax reducing the levy, or the state forcing us to reduce the levy, we will be asking for less property tax askings. Had the state not done what they had done, we certainly could have maintained the 90-10 split. The next thing is that there is a question on whether or not street projects and street or sewer projects will be reduced because we're shifting more funds to the general fund. And I gave you a memo that if we use our money wisely, that we can plan using the local option sales tax to pay debt service to fix roads. And what I want to be able to say to you is that, you know, I did some work on this. There are three basic ways to make a road surface more drivable. You can use a seal coat, which is a chip and seal. You level the course, then you do maybe do a leveling course, then you seal it and put the chips down. There's a mill and overlay. You take off a couple of inches of the pavement, you fix your hot spots, level some things off, and then you put a new road course down. Or there's the reconstruction. From seal coat to reconstruction, of course, the price increases. What I did is I asked a question to other cities out there, and I said, what are you paying right now for a mill and fill project? And they sent me their bid tabs, and their projects range from 3 blocks to 8 blocks worth of work. And what I did was I averaged what they were paying based upon their lowest bid. Now understand that the projects include curb and gutter work, some sidewalk work, handicap ramps, which is something we would probably want to include as well. What it doesn't include is any underlying utility work, because you're not doing any of that. What I came up with was an average cost per block of $169,692. Based upon putting forth what Piper and Sandler created for us as how we could use the local option sales tax as part of the bond issuance for the SRF. There was anywhere from slightly less than $1 million to $1.9 million allocated for streets each year. So using a number of 1.5 million on average that we could dedicate strictly to streets, and we did it on a pay-as-you-go, we would get an estimated 28 blocks of streets in 3 years on pay-as-you-go. And the reason why I use 3 years is because if you bond for money, you're supposed to use it up within 3 years. Right? However, we borrowed $10 million and used $1 million annually to pay bonds. We completed an estimated 59 blocks in 3 years. And this, and the estimates that Pipewood came to us were based upon a 70-30 split, not a 90-10. So there is money there if we use it and plan as Administrator Rath stated. If we plan for the future, we can do more with that money. We just have to do that. And that's why we are completing the capital improvement plan. I'm working with the Public Works Department and the Streets Department in order to build that plan so that we can maximize our dollars and get as much done as we possibly can.
So it sounds like we're trying to, well, first we had to be reactive to a situation that we've been put in by our legislator, and now we're trying to be proactive in ensuring that we're doing the best with what we have.
Correct.
I think it's just important to reiterate that it is dangerous rhetoric to say that you should vote no to this item to an entire community. Because quite literally, we are being forced to be put in a situation of extreme debt that we are having to figure out on the fly. And to tell the community that we should vote no and go back to planning and figure it out later is just not an option, because we don't have time to do that. I also think that there is this idea that the community, or that the city council and city staff in general, have grossly misused the funds, community dollars, and that is also incorrect. The spirit of this bill, and if you've listened to the forum from the League of Women's Voters, Brian Morgan puts it beautifully, that the spirit of this bill, House Bill 718, was good, that communities should not be overtaxed, right? That local government should not be taking advantage of their constituents and their tax dollars. Ottumwa was not one of those communities. We just happened to get grouped into that legislative as well. And so now we're seeing the repercussions of that, right? So number one, it's not a staff issue. Our staff is wonderful. You work tirelessly, and you have been putting in the work ever since this bill has been passed in order to keep our city afloat. So I thank you for that. I also would like to mention, just based on that slide that shows what our general fund actually goes towards, without this split, there's a huge concern about streets and our infrastructure and our economy. Without this split, the 70-30, that goes away. So it sounds good to say that we have 90% going towards our streets, but in reality, that's not going to be happening. We might have 90 going into our streets, but everything else around our streets is going to be falling apart. And if you have nice streets and nowhere to go to, it doesn't matter anymore. Those services are important and they need to be provided to our community. And also the comment that we should pause and have this discussion later, that's not a reality. This needs to be passed now so that those discussions can continue to happen so that we can be proactive in our planning. So I just encourage our community to vote yes on this, to help support your city staff members, your family, your friends that work for the city so that they can get their job done and provide a community that gives services and benefits to those that live here, because that's what we need. And to say that we shouldn't vote no on this, it puts all of that in danger, and that vision disappears for years. It will take years to recover from this if we don't start planning this and doing this now. Thank you.
My response is vote no. We do have until December 31st, 25 to make a redecision and decide what else we would like to do with these monies.
No, we don't. Because then we have to go back to a primary, we have to go back to another vote, and there's no time for that.
Are you done? May I respond?
Go ahead.
Thank you. We do have until that time. So we can bring this back to the council and the city, again, with a recommendation from the public who voted against it, so that we can correct it and bring it back for a vote again. Yes, there will have to be another vote. Well, Lord help us, there's always another vote. So it's important that we do it right and do it to the benefit of the public, not just say for the city, you don't have to save any money, just make it spend, just go for it. Well, there's things besides threatening people with cutting off their water. There's things besides not trying to do well for the city. We, I'm sure, could find areas where we spend money and we don't have to. And I'm not going to make this statement, but I will. This over $700,000 that we approved for equipment purchase is a lot of money. And I think we need to talk about what our projected expenses are going to be and how the money will come in to cover them. And I'm just telling you, we need to be able to talk about it again. So you do need to vote no, and it'll come back. And it'll come back with your comments. Thank you.
I would just echo what Cyan says. I think that this is important for everyone in the community, and it's not just about the city, it's about our community too. And also, to say that we need to talk about how this money is being spent on like 4 and 5, for example, in our consent agenda. We did have those conversations. They were brought forward to council. We had the conversations again tonight, and everyone on this council voted yes for those.
You know, I just have one comment too. So, you know, I always like to be totally transparent with all of you. I was totally against the 70-30. I was until I realized what it could cost us. I mean, if you look, if we go, you don't have to go back to the slide. One of the cuts is police department, fire department. Another of the cuts is services. I just believe we can't do that to our citizens. I agree with them. I don't want to spend taxpayer money frivolously, but I don't want my citizens to suffer either. Even if there was a chance that public safety could get cut, we can't take that chance. We can't take that chance with some of those cuts. So, you know, I just want to throw that out there and be transparent that I did research it. I do support it. I did research it. I just don't want to take a chance on those cuts, and we are running short of time. I mean, time could cost us. Cole, I do want to thank you for the work you put into it, the research, and I know you've been sweating over it, so thank you.
And we're gonna sweat a little more, and then I think I want to point out is that we have said all along that even with a yes vote, that we are going to have to look for efficiencies and continue to look at ways to reduce our costs, because our valuations estimated at a 1.7% increase in tax valuations each year, are not keeping up with inflation. So we do have to look at that, and I think that from what I've seen from our department heads, they're very conscious, and our department managers, well, they're very conscious of how they spend the city's money. That they ask questions of me of, you know, how to do things so that they are getting the biggest bang for the buck. So, you know, to be upfront and honest, right? Even with the 70-30, we're gonna need to look at efficiency. Even if we didn't have to ask for this, we would still be looking for ways to be more efficient. Barb can tell you that when positions open, we do take a look at, do we need to fill them? Is there a way to shift the duties? Currently, we have retirement in the finance department. Well, with the new financial system coming on, even without the new financial system coming on, we realized that we can shift those duties to the other personnel in there. So we're down one position, right? And that's what is constantly going on. So I want to remind the council that we are constantly looking at those things in order to maximize the dollars that the public gives us, and to become more efficient and effective.
I would also state in your monthly financial update too, you're very conscious about identifying, hey, this is what you just said. I feel like every month you're identifying that too. We continue to look at this, or this is what we've done. And I truly appreciate that also.
So there's 2 quick points. One, we do have limited time to schedule votes, plus and I think we have 1 or 2 beyond the September 10th, before this would expire. So there are limits as to how many times we go to the voters on this. The other thing is, this was voted, the split was voted on the April 23rd meeting. I mentioned at the last slide there. Encourage, if anyone is questioning that, go back and watch that. There was a lot of good conversation, I feel, about how we got to that 70-30, aside from some of the slides here tonight. And go back and revisit that. That vote did occur of council to set that at 70-30 on that April 23rd, 2024 meeting.
4-1, that's correct.
And to Mr. Rath's point about the election, I believe that the next schedule, the next time we could schedule a special election would be March of 2025. And if that fails, then I believe again would be September. There are specific dates that the state gives us that we can have in special elections. We just can't call them at any time. We have to be able to specify within certain dates of the year.
Any other comments from council before we move on?
Thank you for your explanation, Mr. O'Donnell. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Paul.
That's all I had for tonight.
Okay. The next item is we're asked if there's any citizens that would like to speak on any of tonight's agenda items, and we do have 4 individuals that would like to speak on agenda item G2, so I will call you up here when we get to that point on our agenda. If anybody else wants to speak on any agenda item, you need to bring up one of those white pieces of paper over there in the basket over there by Police Chief Farrington. Okay, we do have 1 public hearing, so we'll go ahead and proceed with that.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the authorization of a loan disbursement agreement and issuance of notes not to exceed $16 million to evidence the obligation of the city thereunder.
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and I think Mr. O'Donnell's gonna talk on this.
Yes, the issuance is actually a loan from the State Revolving Loan Fund. It is $16 million for Division 8, right? No, it's not Division 8, it is Phase 8, Division 3. There you go. Phase 8, Division 3. Because we are using alternate financing, which is the low cost sales tax, in order to finance this rather than using sewer revenues. It is considered a general obligation, and therefore we have to go through the proceedings that the state sets forth, which is a public hearing on the issuance and The, that's it, I'm sorry. I went off script, so I'm not as good at living when I stay on script, so.
Does council have any questions for Mr. O'Donnell? Since this is a public hearing, does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments they'd like to make? If not, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Mizzou.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Resolution number 182, 2024, instituting proceedings to take additional action for the issuance of not to exceed $16 million general obligation capital loan notes, State of Iowa revolving fund loan. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 182, 2024.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Basu.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Resolution number 187, 2024, declaring an official intent under Treasury Regulation 1.150-2 to issue debt to reimburse the city for certain original expenditures paid in connection with specified projects. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 187, 2024.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Okay, Mr. O'Donnell.
As our loan is distributed on a reimbursement basis, then we have to pass this resolution that basically states that we will expend the money and be reimbursed. And without it, I'll wager say that we can't do that, so.
Council have any questions for Mr. O'Donnell? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Basu.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Okay, we have two ordinances we'll move into next.
Ordinance number 3232, 2024, amending chapter 23, motor vehicles and traffic of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Ottumwa, Iowa, by adding a new article, golf carts, therein for the purposes of regulating the operation of golf carts within the corporate limits of the City of Ottumwa, Iowa. Recommendation, pass the third consideration and adopt ordinance number 3232, 2024.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Phil, you can speak on this.
So this is, as was mentioned, the third reading. It has been brought up two previous times. I'm not aware of any, anything that's come in for or against this since the second reading. The first reading did pass 3-2. One no vote was due to an abstention vote. But the second one also was 3-2, and is now moved to the third reading, and before you here tonight. As I mentioned, I'm not aware of any other comments for or against following that second reading.
Does council have any questions for Phil? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Basu.
No.
Councilmember Galloway.
No.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2. Ordinance number 3233, 2024, amending the Code of Ordinances by changing the zoning classification of property known as 1014 North Elm Street, lots 30, 31, 32, and 33 in East Ottumwa, in addition to the City of Ottumwa, Buffalo County, Iowa, from R2, two-family residential district, to R4, multifamily residential medium density district. Recommendation, pass the third consideration and adopt ordinance number 3233, 2024.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Zach, are you gonna make some comments?
Yes, and I'll be brief because I've spoken about it a few times. There are a couple things I want to say as additional information. The first is.
We do have 5 people who are gonna speak on this after you get done too.
Correct. The first is that the issue of courtesy notices and being sent in a wider radius and things like that will be on the agenda for the Plan and Zoning Commission on the September 9th meeting. That meeting usually is on the first Monday of the month. That was Labor Day, so we moved to September 9th. That'll be at 6 p.m. That'll actually be here at Bridgeview Center There's a scheduled conflict with the Human Rights Coalition meeting the same day, so we're gonna meet here at Bridgeview Center at 6 p.m. And that will be one of the items on that agenda. That is a pretty big agenda for that board, so it's gonna be a substantial meeting, so folks should be ready for that, but that's gonna be one of the items on that, agenda.
And that's an open meeting to the public.
It is, it is. And then our anticipation will be to be able to bring some policy out of that to present at the subsequent council meeting, the second council meeting in September. Looking like it's also shaping up, we will have to recommend a resolution to increase the fees for rezonings and variances. If we're going to expand the radius, it looks like the cost for postage will go up at least $75, $80 on average, for each of these that we consider. So our recommendation will be to raise the fees $100 for rezonings and variances and things like that. The other thing I want to do is we did receive some questions from Chris Craver related to the rezoning. Some of those were able to be answered partially or completely by staff. And then the developer has some questions they'll also provide answers to. And I do want to go through some of those. They were all provided in the packet, the staff responses, and then the responses from CISS were received today and were given to council members before the meeting. One thing I will kind of preface with this is that it's really hard to answer these questions because they're phrased in a way that I would say kind of poisons the well. They ask a question with a base assumption that you have to address first, and then you can answer the question. So I'll kind of highlight that as we do. The first is, what was the reason to delay public input to the project 6 months? That's not a decision that anybody ever made. There was no intent to delay. The plans were ready in March, and then this was submitted later on. That's because the plans were prepared further to a grant, it had to be reviewed, other things. This is a project that's over $1 million. There's a reasonable expectation that there's a difference between when construction things are finished and when things are getting made into decisions, right? There wasn't any attempt to delay anything in that way. The second question we received that we can provide a partial answer to, or I think in this case probably a full answer to. The question is, outdated, very old or insufficient city infrastructure was required to be replaced when single-family homes were developed at the corner of East Court and Oak Street. Doesn't the same situation exist? Again, that has an assumption at the beginning that isn't true. The situation with the East Court development for Prisoner subdivision was not that there was inadequate infrastructure, it's that the sewer didn't extend to those parcels that had never been developed before. Anthony Christner requested assistance from the city in doing that sewer extension. That was an issue that went before the council and was approved for an incentive. That plan also had another $10,000 per home in incentives for the Build Ottumwa program. And so, this is not a project that's requiring any city investment, and the infrastructure that exists is going to be adequate going forward there. There was also a question about traffic and speed on North Elm, and a concern that it would make it too dangerous to have a driveway. The proposed driveway will be reviewed to be to the standard that's set for streets, but North Elm having significant traffic is really what makes it suitable for development. It's designated as a minor arterial, which is the second greatest classification on the map I was looking at for streets that we actually have in the city. Other minor arterials are Main Street, Church Street, Buffalo Street. It's suitable to have traffic here, especially when we're not talking about a newly developed building. This is a building that's been in use for over 10 years and has generated traffic during, duration of its life. The motion of traffic is going to be improved by relocating the new parking lot to the way they're looking at it. I'd be satisfied with that. Their question came with CISS paying property tax, or are they exempt? The current property does not pay property tax. We did just find out today from CIS they do plan to pursue the same tax exemption that applies with the current property. It will be up to the assessor whether that qualifies. We don't have any authority in setting it on abatement. We're not going to abate the taxes, but if there is an exemption that exists in law, they would have to take advantage of that in the county. Another one of the questions that's hard to answer is, since residential value or property values will drop, will our property taxes decrease? Again, there's an assumption built into the question. We can't expect that property taxes will necessarily do, or the property values will necessarily go in any certain direction. This isn't a new project. There's no real good comparison for what would happen to values. In general, values have gone up quite a bit in Ottumwa recently. And measuring the anticipation there is really going to be hard to do, especially because we can't even look at other multifamily developments and what happened, because those would have been new site multifamily developments. This is repurposing what was already providing housing to folks that had special housing needs. So it's really hard to really anticipate whether there would be a difference there. And of course, if your value decreases, property taxes still have a lot of other complicated factors that make it hard for us to say definitively, would the taxes go up or down? There's the rollback, there's the levies, all those other factors that are gonna be considered, of course, as well. So, we did do our best to try to provide answers to those questions. And then, Sam is gonna provide a few more information on what the actual program, that CISS does, because that formed a lot of the other questions. So.
Thank you, Zach. Next, I think it would be appropriate to have Mr. Sam Carell with Central Iowa Shelter Services come up and talk about the rest of the questions that were asked by some citizens before I go ahead and have the other individuals come up. Because I think a lot of their questions centered around wanting to know more about the programming that Central Iowa Services was going to provide.
Yeah, and I am Sam Carroll, Central Iowa Shelter Services, set up the Mulberry Street, Lemoyne.
Microphone closer to your mouth, please.
Is that better?
Yes.
1 second. I'm not sure.
It
wasn't never on.
It's hard to hear.
This is the first time they've used a wireless on this, though. I don't know if it got turned on right.
How's it?
So, folks, how are you? By the way, I wrote at Ragbri, as I do pretty much every year, and you guys really did an exceptional job. I just want to share that from a regular writer's perspective. So I think some of the questions were around programming, how that happens. When I talk about program, I talk in a small p, because not every, it's not a standard thing that we put everybody through. We try to meet people where they are. And so it's a lot about resource and referral. And so a person who's dealing with an addiction or something, we're going to put them to treatment. That's not what we do. We're going to put them over there first. And so whatever that program is and whatever organization that we're working with that really has that expertise, same thing with health evaluation, it could be job training, it could be education. All those things we really focus on leveraging with the other organizations that you already have in the community, and they leverage with us because they will bring in, they'll have someone that they're working with and they'll know what our program is, and so they'll send them over to us. It's really an intake process, and what we do is our caseworkers, we have a outreach worker who might identify that person through various, again, a lot of referrals and conversations back and forth between organizations. Then that person will come in and do an interview with our caseworkers. It's really the caseworker that determines what those needs are, what those resources that we ought to be referring to them, what it is that we have on hand that we can help them with. All that takes place before we ever put somebody, you just don't throw keys to somebody and say, oh, here you go. We do try to get them housed. We try to get them housed in the appropriate spot. So there's a lot of questions around that, but that was basically some of the things that they were asking us and how we do this.
And I believe you'd indicated you were to have a staff person available for the residents during the daytime, but not right.
Right, yeah, I mean, we treat it just like a regular residential, facility, except there are supports there during the day, whether that's financial. And we bring in other groups. We actually will have all of it. We call it a housing command center, but we'll actually have other organizations come in. There might be one of the local health organizations that we bring in to do those evaluations once a week, or we might bring it over. We might send them over to the community college through some kind of training program that fits that person's interest, and then we also do a lot of our own in-house training. We have quite a robust custodial care program, food growing program. We have a huge greenhouse. We've got food services, things like that, where we try to also fill in what the community might need from a service industry or something that they can be trained in that makes them self-sustainable in the long run.
One of the other questions was how do you ensure that this shelter or the living
it's a house. It's
housing
an apartment.
unit.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a housing unit. Yeah.
How this housing unit will directly help local citizens who are suffering from homelessness.
So again, through our outreach and through other organizations, we don't ask someone in, Powashik County to refer someone down to Wapello. We're working, we try to establish this in each one of the 15 counties that we work in through the rolling hills. So, our outreach worker that works in Wapello County, he's gonna refer Wapello County folks. They're not only gonna just be Ottumwa folks, they'll be Wapello County folks and people that are here, depending on, I mean, there are cases where we have someone come in and we do an intake with, and what they really want to do is get back to Colorado, and so we'll find funding and get them there as well. So there's no magic one way that we do that. It's just because of who we're working with locally and what our caseworkers, they're going to get them to where their resources. And for the folks in Wapello County, their support systems are here.
And as you said, and this is another question too, is this current or program currently available in Ottumwa? And as you just said, it is, just adding the apartment complex. So these caseworkers are already working with the people in Ottumwa or Wapello County, so they know, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, so I make the assumption that they have probably already identified that there's this group of people I work with are better suited for apartment living, whereas this group of people need more wraparound services and need more support before they can live on.
Yeah, and we work closely with the Ottumwa Housing Authority, for instance, and there's a waiting list with, for different types of things. And so we try to, a lot of times for certain programs there may not match up. So we'll use a lower barrier from an income standpoint to be able to put them in and then subsidize them with project-based vouchers, that kind of thing, to make sure that they have a good place to be under a roof, where sometimes the private landlords, it's a little bit harder for them to.
Thank you.
So, Sam, what we're saying, this is kind of what I want to say. I want to be clear, even if this was strictly just a homeless shelter for anybody they were taking in, I'd still be for it, no matter where it was. However, this is more of a supportive housing. So I did a little bit of research, and I'll share it. I'll just take 2 minutes, which there was some shocking results I found out. Number one, the people who will be seeking this housing out are not the ones that you're worried about. I mean, the ones who maybe need a program, the ones that maybe need some treatment, they're not the ones that's gonna be seeking this treatment. I actually went out and talked to some families who said this program saved their life. I talked to one young lady in a gas station who's a single mom who would be living in a Walmart parking lot right now if it wasn't for programs like this. I also did, and for anybody who wants my resources, I have all my resources noted, all my websites, and all my details I'm glad to share. Studies did show, and I won't go through every one of them, but when you want to help somebody solve this, the problem is actually near homelessness, and permanent housing with supportive services was the #1 strategy to prevent homelessness. What drives homelessness is what we're actually having a problem with in society, is low-paying jobs, inflation going up. So this housing is to prevent homelessness. And, I think this is gonna sound weird. You don't have to be immediately, you could be homeless and not immediately, is what I'm saying. You could be near homelessness. Everybody's one paycheck away from being homeless. Also, another thing I found interesting, and again, there wasn't many studies done on this. I really had to look. When a homeless shelter, strictly a homeless shelter, went into a neighborhood, and I'm talking homeless where we had to go get people and bring them in, property values fell at the highest was 7%. When supportive homes were put in a neighborhood, property values were not affected, and in some cases went up 2 to 5%. Because remember, these are still families that are moving into an apartment complex. And the reason I keep reiterating that, I want people to understand what this is. This is supportive housing. Does everybody know? I mean, we're all on homeless shelters and shelters. Do you know what the #1 thing that lowers property value is? Is bad schools, maintenance of property. Do you know that homeless shelters and supportive care shelters were not even in the top we're not even in the top 10, the lowest property values. So I found that interesting. Use of supporting housing. Here's one more fact, we'll stop, and I promise, I know that they probably want some other things. Over the course of a person's life, say it's somebody who's struggling financially, we have these supportive services. The taxpayer saves on average over that one person's lifetime, for each person, $20,000, because they improve, they move out, and they in turn are contributing to society, and oftentimes they go back to help people who are in their position to contribute to society. So on average, we save $28,000 per person here with supportive housing. So again, I will just end with, I understand the neighbor's concern. I don't want to discount those. But remember, the ones who are seeking this housing out, this particular housing are people who want to do better. And it would benefit them to be around responsible people like you who could help them and would care about them. However, I don't want to discount your concern. That's not what I'm doing. I fully support this program. I think it helps people get back in society, and it gives people their dignity back, and it gives people the help they need, who in turn help other people. So, transparency, that's what it is for me.
Does council have any other questions for Mr. Corral? Thank you. Next, I'll call Chris Kramer up. Go ahead and state your name and your address.
Thank you. Am I close enough to the mic for
Yeah,
everybody?
and everybody will have 3 minutes for each of your
Thank you.
presentations.
My name is Chris Kramer. I live at 948 North Elm. I have a prepared statement and I'd like to try to read part of it. I don't think it will take near 3 minutes, and then I'd like to get into some of the questions, if I may. I see now that you have plans already drawn up by an architectural firm for March of 2024. I still do not understand why it's necessary to wait until we have a deadline staring in our face to address public input. It makes it feel like it's intentional that you are trying to minimize the timeframe that you have available for public input. It also makes it feel like we are being railroaded into a project that, at least at the start, we felt would not be good for our neighborhood. I also resent what feels like trying to trivialize our concerns for the neighborhood. I understand in some of the statements, it's been said it's not a problem in Des Moines. It doesn't occur in that facility, but that's like comparing apples and oranges. You're comparing a 3 or 4 story building in a downtown metropolitan location versus an older residential neighborhood in a small town. You're comparing attitudes of proposed subsidized renters versus older property owners. You're comparing downtown vehicle and foot traffic versus family activities in backyards, dog walking, kids traveling to and from school, and other activities such as that. You're comparing noise levels in downtown Des Moines versus quiet residential noise. It's not the same. You're not comparing apples and apples. I understand and agree with most of the goals you had for this type of a project. I feel this is not the right location for it. There are locations all over this town that could accomplish your goals without a negative impact on a residential neighborhood. I don't have a real estate background, but I see buildings around town that appear to be more suitable than what we're talking about right now. The bank building on Market and Main, it's right there with bus routes. You've got a medical facility right across the street. You've got city parking within a half block. The old YMCA building on, I think it's 2nd to North Green, it's sitting empty, I think, because of back taxes. It certainly would appear on the outside that it would function suitably for your purpose. The Ottumwa Board of Education building on North Van Buren, already has parking on both sides of that building with potential for expansion to a 3rd floor. And those crisis center lots were of interest to a local builder for single family residential dwellings at one time, which doesn't mean, whoops, I think I just lost my mic, but maybe you could still hear me. Which doesn't mean that we would like to prevent the crisis center from selling the lots. There should have been a function there anyway.
You have any final statement you want to make as your 3 minutes is up?
Oh, thank you. I didn't talk nearly as fast as I did.
I feel that these issues should have been exposed and addressed back in the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting early on in this process, rather than wait for us to beat a dead horse in front of the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Becky Engel.
Hi, I'm Becky Engel, 952 North Elm, and I spoke at the last meeting, and I'll start off the same. I'm against any apartment complex going next door. I thought about that today as I was sitting outside in my yard with my dog, reading the book, enjoying the quiet of my neighborhood. I didn't prepare a speech this time because last time things changed rapidly, and I didn't have answers to the questions that we had asked, and so that would have helped me prepare a better speech. So if I rambled, I apologize. But I was very surprised today when I opened up the paper, didn't have to open it up, it was front page, and saw the article that was in today's Courier. This has been called permanent housing, it has been called transition, it says it's not transitional housing, but the goal of the housing is to be a transition until homeless residents get back on their feet. Isn't that transitional housing? I'm just unclear as to the purpose of this place. It seems to keep changing. When we ask questions, we get circular answers, very good political answers. Sam just said something about a food garden. We have a food garden here in Ottumwa already. I'm unaware of it. He's talking about, there's already a building there. Yes, there is a building there. It currently has no residents in it, just people who work there during the day, but it did have residents in it. We're doubling. I think according to the plans I've seen, it looks like we're almost doubling the size of that building. That's going to add to the noise and the amount of traffic. Talk about traffic. I talked to the man who lives directly across the street from it. His driveway to get out of North Elm, luckily he has another one that'll get him out of Eastport, because it's too dangerous for him to see over the hill if cars are coming. And there's just so many things to think about. As Chris said, there are other places. I'm all about helping people. Some of you know me, and I do what I can to help people. I just think this is not the place for it to be located. Again, as Chris said, we're not comparing apples to apples. It's apples to oranges. We're not downtown Des Moines. We are a neighborhood in Ottumwa that would like to keep it a quiet, safe place to live.
Thank you. Next would be Dennis Renfrew.
Okay, I don't need a mic. I'll just talk a little loud, because I'm good at it. I'd like to start out by saying my name's Dennis Renfrew. I live at 1003 North Elm Street, directly across from this building. I see it every day, all the time. I've lived there right across the street. I've lived there for approximately 27 years. I lived there back when it was a disabled home. I watched the transition to the women's shelter. And then last I knew, it was the Family Crisis Center over there, which I donate to as a Shriner to Mason. So I help. Okay. With that said, my chief concern, I'm a very good person to talk about this, is my safety concerns. From Lincoln Avenue coming from Jefferson Street to the East Court section that runs beside it. So if you come up the hill on Lincoln off of Jefferson, the East Court section on the other side of this project, there's 487 feet. I measured it. I know. There's 187 feet of streets and driveways in that length of area. So there's less than 300 feet left to put another driveway in for a parking lot. And on this hill, which I'm going to phrase it the way I wrote it, it's basically a fun ride. That hill has a significant downhill decline to it. You cannot see over the top from the bottom. You can't see the bottom from the top. And we constantly have people driving way beyond the speed limit to catch air. They love the fun ride they get out of it. I watch it constantly, not only from citizens, but policemen, highway patrol, fire trucks, ambulances. That is a very, very busy street. It's significantly busy, extremely busy when the hospital gets off, shift changes, Indian Hills. And now it's construction going on Jefferson Street. It's exponentially worse. People trying to get around Jefferson Street. So it takes 60 seconds at 30 miles an hour to travel that distance. 60 seconds if you're 30 miles an hour. You're popping over this hill, all of a sudden, somebody's out in front of you. How are you gonna stop? You don't have time. Coming up the hill's the same thing. And we have ATVs and all kinds of stuff that blow through those corners all the time. We have little kids riding their bikes out there and they don't watch where they're riding. And you're gonna bring in a whole bunch more people, a lot more traffic. I see the police over there too much already. We got rid of the drug dealers, finally. So we have a peaceful neighborhood and have had now for 2 years. We enjoy it. I don't want to see this come in here and end up with accidents, people getting hit, little kids getting run over, and we have deer that like to dart across there all the time. I live there, I see it all the time. I have chief safety concerns here. I don't want anybody hurt. And I'll finalize by telling you, I was homeless for over a year. I was. You don't know what it's like. I've poured this project, not there. If you want to talk about homeless, talk to me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Those are the only slips I had. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak on this agenda item before it goes to the vote of the council? Then did you have something else you want to say?
No, just any questions.
Does council have any other questions for Zach before Chris takes the roll?
Zach, I've talked to several people in that area up there.
Yeah.
And the majority have given their thoughts on this already here at the meeting. And some have not, but when they talk to me, they ask me, what if you lived there? How would you feel about this?
Mhm.
And my first response is, I don't think you got fair notice that the rezoning was coming. I've never been involved with rezoning in Ottumwa or anything, but I found out 200 feet doesn't go very far. And so I think what's coming up is going to evaluate 600 feet or 1,000 feet or some other formula for notice. And I think it's important that we consider what's going on, consider possibly waiting till after the rezoning program is in place so that we're not putting action on the table that will fall under the old zoning record or reference, if that is such a thing.
Yeah, and I guess I would say that would not be my recommendation. I believe the applicant's entitled to have their rezoning request heard swiftly. The lawful notice was published, additional notice was provided. The fact that a few condo owners didn't get it until a little later, but people have been able to speak 3 times in this meeting. We've had more people speak on this rezoning than any rezoning since the Bonita project. I don't believe that there's a reason to have delay. I think delay would hurt the project. I think the delay would be appropriate for the community. And I think that we've identified a couple of opportunities to improve the courtesy system that we should absolutely take. But I don't think it's a reason to reflect anything on this project. At the end of the day, this is a project to rezone what was already a shelter to be apartments. There's multifamily directed to the north. There's multifamily directed to the south. In the scope of things, I think this is a pretty simple in terms of land use, in terms of what the code identifies, things to look for rezoning.
One of the things that I think is important is a sign that's big enough to read. And what was posted was not. It may have been easy for you to read, it wouldn't be easy for me to read, and the picture that I saw of it would tell me that it wasn't very easy for anybody. So I'm assuming, coming up with the next zoning commission, and we'll talk about the size of the item to be posted so that everyone can read it.
Right, we've done some research in preparation of that meeting related to letter height, what's visible from certain distances. We still own quite a few copies of that sign. I think there are cases where we'll be able to responsibly still use that on small residential lots that are requesting conditional use permits and things like that. But I think that in general, we're gonna be using letter sign absolutely.
Thank you.
Zach, remind us when the next, zoning commission meeting is.
Yes, the Plan and Zoning Commission meeting will be next Monday, September 9th, at 6 p.m. here at the Nature Center.
September 9th, it's gonna be here, not the.
Here and not
So
at
that's
the
a
depot.
change.
Yeah,
Make sure everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's at what time?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Thank you.
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. And I apologize, I'm not able to have discourse with community members at a public hearing. But I do want to share my appreciation for your story, Dennis. As someone who's also suffered from homelessness, I understand it's difficult to talk to and admit. And I appreciate you being so open about that. I also would encourage all of you who spoke, not just Dennis, to participate in our committees and on our boards, because obviously you are educated people and you can dig through the information, you can find information. Come volunteer and help us make these decisions before they get to our council table, because insight like this is truly valuable. And really it's invaluable. There's no amount of money that can be put on these experiences and your ability to look for information. So come and work with us and help us to make informed decisions and have better items at our council table. So thank you.
And I guess the only other thing I would add to that is I really appreciate the people's comments that they've made over the last several weeks, because I think there was some concerns brought up about the notification process that the city uses when there's a zoning request being made. And I think there's some good things that can come out of this. And I think Zach had said at the last meeting that he thinks there is some definite room for improvement in how the city can maybe be a more comprehensive effort in notifying people about a zoning change. So I do appreciate people's comments, and I do think, you know, regardless of how this vote goes, I think you can feel good that you have brought legitimate concerns to the city council's attention, and there are going to be some changes made, at least for the future. So I just want you to know I appreciate your input and your comments. Does anybody have any other comments they want to make before we do roll call? All right, Chris, take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh,
No.
Councilmember Basu,
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Okay, it passes 4-1. We don't have any departmental board or commission recommendations or reports, so we'll move to resolutions.
Resolution number 188, 2024, fixing September 10th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. as the date for a public hearing on the proposition to authorize a loan agreement and the issuance of not to exceed $800,000 general obligation capital loan notes to evidence the obligations of the city thereunder and providing for publication of notice thereof. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 188, 2024.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Okay, Ms. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Your Honor. The compactor at the landfill is in need of immediate replacement. The current unit has failed repair costs beyond the benefit of retaining the unit. Solid Waste Commission is recommending the purchase of a Aljon ADV 500 landfill compactor for the base price of $733,756 through a qualified bank loan. The loan is considered general obligation debt and proceedings to enter in the document must follow Iowa Code on the issuance of debt. The first step is a public hearing. Given the immediate need, staff is recommending the hearing be held at a special meeting on September 10th, 5:30 p.m. at the depot. This was considered initially as a lease. Our financial advisor at Piper & Sandler did some checking, found out that bank rates would probably save $20,000 to $25,000 over the term of either the lease or the loan.
Council, have any questions for Mr. O'Donnell?
And what's the intended use for the one that we're replacing? One that's
From my understanding, that it's so beyond, repair that it'll basically be junk. Okay, go ahead. No, I'm sorry.
We are receiving $150,000 trade-in value.
That
with
seems
value.
reasonable. Thank you.
Also, just a comment, like, and council can attest to this too, those that come to the solid waste commission meetings, understand the dire situation for funds for the landfill and recycling unit. And I know there have been budgetary concerns tonight, spending money on this item, would not have come to our table if it was not absolutely necessary. Think that's
Any other questions for Mr. O'Donnell? Not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Basu.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Resolution number 190-2024, approving the plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Wapello Street Extension Trail Project. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 190-2024.
Is there a recommendation?
What the recommendation?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Bergmeyer.
Thank you, Mayor. So this project, we're creating a trail that will start at Richmond Avenue at the intersection of Berry Street, and it runs north along the east side of Berry Street and Wapello Street extension to Greater Ottumwa Park. There's an existing walk between Richmond and the Scooter's Coffee driveway. That'll be widened to 8 feet. And then from north of their driveway to the park, it'll be a 10-foot wide trail, approximately 6 inches thick. So roughly a 1,000-foot long trail. Bids will be received and opened by the city of Ottumwa on September 18, 2024 at 2 p.m. The bid report, award recommendation will be presented to the city council meeting on October 1st, 2024, for a later date as determined by staff. And at that meeting, we'll have the public hearing once we know the actual cost of the project. Funding for this is going to be all from a REAP grant and a legacy grant. So there's no city funds will be ultimately paying for this project.
Is the completion date by the end of this year or before?
Yes, we'll have a completion date of November 30th, and there will be much work required, so they don't finish by November 30th, or by, they don't finish by the time winter starts. If they get time in the winter, they'll have to work through winter to finish it.
Any other questions for Mr. Bergmeyer? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Basu.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yeah.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Resolution number 191-2024, authorizing the mayor to execute a recreational trail easement to develop, construct, and maintain the Wapello Street Extension Trail. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 191-2024.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved. Second.
Okay, Mr. Bergmeyer.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So this easement is because there's not room right now between the roundabout and the property just to the east of there. For simplicity's sake, we just copied an existing storm sewer easement for the extents. In reality, the trail probably not even close to half of that easement that you see on your plans. It'll barely hit the corner of it. So, and it's required. We don't have the easement, we can't build a trail, so. And it's been.
Looks like Randy was very cooperative with you.
He was very, yes.
Any questions for Philip? By council? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Basu.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Resolution number 192-2024, approving the plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Church Street Crosswalks project. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 192-2024.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I'll go ahead and have Philip speak, but we do have one other individual who wants to speak on this agenda item, when Philip's done.
Okay. So this project will place stand crosswalks and with ADA accessible ramps across Church Street. It's relocated at Ransom Street, Davis Street, and then a painted crosswalk with ADA ramps will be installed at Moore Street. The bids will be received and opened by the city of Ottumwa on September 18th, 2024 at 2:00 p.m. The bid report and bid award recommendations will be presented to the city council meeting October 1st, 2024. We will hold a public hearing for this project. I just want to say before we finish up, the A ramps themselves are something we're required to do by federal law. The painting of it and the stamps, we're not required to do by federal law, but where we put stamped crosswalks in there will match the existing crosswalks along the streets that intersect Church Street, and the painted crosswalk at more will help better distinguish the crosswalk to traffic as they're driving by. They'll know there's a crosswalk there because nobody will be used to the crosswalk being there, like to paint it to make it more visible.
So,
I'm sorry, being compliant. Correct.
The crosswalks themselves are already ADA compliant. The streets themselves are. What we're doing is building the ramps down to the street.
Keith, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I'm just gonna comment that I think most of those ADA mats are in place on those locations, I think.
They only cross the intersecting streets, so there's ADA ramps across like, Sheridan and Moore and Ransom, all those streets that intersect Church Street. But there's no way to get across Church Street itself on an ADA ramp. And the ADA requires that there's a sidewalk intersecting like Church Street, for instance, and there's a sidewalk on the other side of the street. We're required to provide a way for a handicapped person to get across that street to the sidewalk across the street. And right now, the only two we have are at the 5 corners and at Lee Bardell, the stop signs.
Okay, so how many are you gonna put in
We're
that are
gonna
not
put in
painted? The ones you're
2
gonna-
stamped and 1 painted. We thought for safety's sake, towards 5 corners, I believe that's Ransom, not Ransom. If I get my street
Ward.
straight.
Ransom.
No, there's one more closer to 5 corners.
Ward.
No, Moore's on the north side. So
Isn't
Ward,
Ward?
right. Yeah, so Ward's there. We figured it'd be safer for someone at Ward Street to go to the lights and cross at the lights. And the same thing with Sheridan. The intersection's really busy and it's kind of awkward. So we thought it'd be safer to send someone to the stop signs to cross there. So we're not putting any crosswalks at all at those 2 streets. But for the middle 3 streets we are. So there's no other way across.
And what is your estimate for cost to do those special crossings?
The total project is estimated at 40,000. I don't have a separate item in front of me for the cost of just the stamp part.
Okay, that's close enough for government one.
Does council have any questions for Philip regarding this item? Okay, Chris will take it.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Mark Rowe wants to come up and speak. I'll try to talk really fast and keep this in 3 minutes. Obviously, safety is first and foremost, and I think Philip did a great job of speaking to that, but there's another side of this, which is the law and walkability. First of all, there basically is no walkability in the Church Street district. And as a result, if you look at our walkability scores in the downtown district versus the Church Street district, downtown has a walkability score of 80, which really, there's a lot of factors that play into that, but how close is it to get to someplace? How easy is it to walk there? There's a score of about 80 for downtown. There's a score of 59 for the Church Street district. Basically, it's not walkable. And currently, the way that our laws are written in the city of Ottumwa, at least, if somebody wants to jump across the street from the gas station to the locksmith to Uncle Buck's, or to the monument company, whatever that case may be, we're either asking them to get up, go around the corner, find a place on the other side, or we're asking them to jaywalk. And obviously, there's a safety factor to that. There's also with crossing the streets the way they are now, somebody that has challenges with physical health, they can't get across the street unless they walk, which obviously is considered an issue. Or They're gonna risk racing traffic, which I think we can all agree, traffic, speed is a problem on that street. So, this really is more than just, about the handicap accessibility, although that is monumentally important. This is about, making it walkable for the general community. This is about, helping to promote business in the district, because that has been addressed. As we've talked about the meetings that we've had in the Church Street District, this has been a common theme since we've been doing it. How can we get people to walk down here? And this is the way that we get the people to walk down there, by having those crosswalks in there. Thank you.
I just want to go ahead and thank Mark for all his work that GoPit's done with the Church Street Business District, because I think they felt for a long time like they've kind of left out of all the good things that have been happening on Main Street and downtown Ottumwa. And I think with the changes that is being viewed for Church Street District, it's only going to help to further expand and enhance that area and make it become more viable and that viable in the community. So I appreciate, the heavy lift that you've done on it, because I know you've worked on this for several months. Any other questions for Philip? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Basu.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Resolution number 193, 2024, approving the plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimated costs for the street patch repair program 2024. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 193, 2024.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
Motion to approve.
Second.
You just don't go away, do you?
I got one more thought.
I know, you're on a run tonight, so go ahead, Philip.
Thank you, Mayor. This project is the street patch repair program for 2024. It's a unit price contract for PCC panel replacement as selected streets. Work will consist of full depth soft cutting, pavement removal, and pavement replacement of PCC patches, which is Portland cement concrete patches. Targeted areas will address panel failures and faulting / sediment issues. This project also includes curb and gutter replacement on East Main Street. Bids will be received and opened by the city of Ottumwa on September 18th, 2024 at 2:00 p.m. The bid report and bid award recommendation will be presented at the city council meeting October 1st, 2024, or at the later dates determined by staff. And at that meeting, we awarded again, we'll have the public hearing then. The estimated cost of this contract is $175,000, and the budget this is coming out of is our street maintenance budget item, which is a total of $750,000 a year budget for contracted maintenance.
Does the council have any questions for Philip regarding this agenda item?
Yeah, Phil, you and I talked previously about trying to do some patching. And I do know at one time I saw a truck with asphalt and a driver filling some holes in some places in the street. Is there any more going on right now? Or are we just gonna wait for this contract to come up?
No, we're still patching streets. Our street crew just got done patching James Street, which you remember that project. They'll do other patches around town. Doing one on, I think, Holt recently we did. I mean, that $175,000, that's basically, it helps our street crew because they only have a certain amount of workable hours, workable days during the year to get all the street patching done. And there's a lot in the city to do, so this will hit some of the, where there's a lot in one spot, we try to contract that out rather than have our guys do it. It's more efficient to contract that out and have our guys hit the small areas. So yeah, they're continuing to fill potholes and patch areas. Some of it we find driving around, and we have a list, but we'll also take phone calls from citizens. If there's a specific area complained about, if we get, suggestions for areas, we'll go check it out. If that fits in what we're doing, we'll hit those areas as well.
Seems like from Pennsylvania up to 4th Street on Jefferson is a highly used area for ambulances and emergency vehicles and stuff. I don't know if that's in your plan for them to do some work through there, but it certainly would be worthwhile.
Yeah, so down the hill towards where the old BP station used to be. That was redone a few years ago and separated up there. The next phase of sewer separation after Division 3, Division 4, that will extend, to separate the storm sewer from Blake's Branch from there all the way to Pennsylvania and Jefferson. So we're patching it, but we're not gonna do the extensive, like, full depth patching on it.
I
It's gonna be
understand.
torn out probably 5 years.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Mizzou.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Resolution number 194, 2024, approving the plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the street crack repair program 2024. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 194, 2024.
Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
One more time, Mr. Burkmeyer.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is another one of our preventive maintenance programs, assisted sealing street cracks throughout the city of Ottumwa. What filling street cracks does is it prevents water from getting in the street, getting under the street, because the wet subgrade doesn't support vehicles as well. So by sealing the cracks, you help prevent water from in the streets, you also prevent rocks and sand that are being compressed by light getting in these cracks and shipping them farther out. There's a huge list of streets here. What we do on this project is we sit with the contractor and ask them kind of what order they want to go in, and we have our priority streets too. We make a plan on where to go among these streets. We have budgeted $75,000 for this. We'll try to target around 70,000 for the contract itself, and the remaining 5,000 is for staff inspection time and designing of the plans and specs for this. So we'll just keep going until we hit the $70,000, and then what streets don't get done this year, you roll over to the next year.
So is that the process of spraying tar on the cracks and then filling it with the
Yeah.
pea gravel or whatever it is?
No, so they'll clean out the crack itself, on asphalt street, they'll clean it out, brush it out, and then they'll fill that crack in with hot pour asphalt. So it's like these big boxes, and you throw in a pot, it melts, and once it gets to a certain temperature, they can use a gun and they'll just go and fill it in.
Well, on East Rochester, as an example, they have been through there with their
Yeah.
tar and pea gravel, I call it, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And I understand what they're doing, but it certainly doesn't smooth it up any. It goes
No.
clippity clock all the way through.
Yeah. Now, this won't improve the rideability, just the lifespan of the road.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Mizzou.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes, thank you. This is a point in our city council meeting where I'd ask if anyone in the audience would like to speak on any non-agenda item this evening. You want to come up and give your name and your address, what you'd like to speak on?
Jose Lopez, live in 313 East Main Street. I'm the owner of Sarah Grande Meat Market. Thinking of expanding it from making it bigger. I saw that, legislature got approved last city council meeting. I was just a little bit confused on some of the wording when it said, something that, it's a 2-story building. And it was less than 5,000 square foot for the sprinkler systems that was discussed last time. I was just wondering if I open up the 2 buildings up. My buildings are now, they are opening up, they're gonna be more than 5,000 square foot. Would I have to put a sprinkler system, or since that the back part is an addition, can I close it off with brick and use that as a firewall? or a really hard fire door.
So what you're talking about is the fire code revision that the council made at the last council meeting. We can't really take any action on anything tonight, but I can ask Zach if he can come up and clarify for you how that revision of the fire code would impact your project.
I wasn't here last time for that, so I couldn't make the meeting, so.
He'll be able to get a quick update, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, so your building's what we were aware of, that project, we were trying to put the ordinance together. There's kind of gonna be a few different options, and this is something that applies to all kinds of buildings when we look at fire area. There's definitely some ways to build around fire area, and separating out spaces like you described is probably a method that can apply here. The main thing is that if the entire open area with no fire barriers is more than 5,000 square feet, even if it weren't mixed use or anything else, you'd be looking at a sprinkler requirement for having such a large fire area. But when you talk about separating out the back space of the building, that's I think 311, or is that 13? That's you're talking about separating space at 313.
Yeah, cause
Okay, because 313 is the market, and then 315 is the new building.
311 is the market,
Okay.
313 is the new building. It used to be back in the day, one building, and then then they made it into a bigger building.
So 311 is the deep. Okay, so then, yes, so separating out the fire area, to be smaller than 5,000 square feet is probably generally a solution. That's something we've done in other cases. We can't definitively say today, we'll have to get together with the fire inspector and draw up a plan, but absolutely, when that was looked at, and we were trying to figure out how to make, accommodations downtown, your building was one of those needs. And I think there's gonna be a way to make this work, that's for sure.
Okay, thanks, Zach. Was there anyone else that wanted to speak on any non-agenda items? If not, we'll move to council and mayor communications before we adjourn. The only thing I'd like to reiterate is to here again remind everyone the importance of voting next Tuesday, September 10th for the 2 city council. People who are running for the city council seats, Diane Sue, Dan Reed. And I also personally hope that everybody will show their support for the 70-30 local option sales tax. I think you've heard a lot of positive information on why that's needed, and people have to vote however they want, but I really do hope that people will support the 70-30 or we're gonna be in these problems down the road. Does anybody have anything they want to communicate on anything?
And first off, I want to take a moment to thank Chief Farrington, Lieutenant Bermander, Lieutenant Fell, and Lieutenant Hooks. They came out last weekend to our to the Wapello County Children's Alliance Golf Tournament, and they cooked for our golfers. They came out on their day off, and they interacted really well with the community, and they were, as always, a hit. We had a lot of fun, and I truly thank them for coming on their day off when they could have been doing other things, but they came out to support the Children's Alliance, and really truly appreciate their time, and the food was great too. So got a lot of compliments on it. I also want to remind everyone that September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and just remember that just because someone's smiling and acts happy doesn't always mean that they are okay. So it's okay to ask people, hey, are you okay? And check in with your family and friends. And to that point, Thursday is Feed the Light Suicide Prevention Walk. It's a glow walk. It's at Central Edition Park. You can still get tickets, and it's all about community. We'll have food trucks, activities, and again, it's about growing community and letting people know you're not alone. And then lastly, Viva Ottumwa is happening on Saturday at the mall. And that's a great opportunity. It starts at 11, and it's a great opportunity to celebrate our community and the diversity of our community. Thank you.
Any other comments, communications that the council would like to make to the public? Okay, if not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn our city council meeting.
So moving.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Yes.
Councilmember Basu.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
We are adjourned, and thank you, everybody, for attending tonight's city council meeting. Safe travels home.